Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So last week, Derek Carr visited the New Orleans Saints, and we spent a lot of time talking about Derek Carr, what a potential move to the Saints might look like, and I, in no uncertain terms, told you that I was adamantly opposed to the Saints trading for Derek Carr. And I want this to be very clear, because I think there's even been confusion on my stance on this, which there should be none, because I'm not sure I could have been any more clear in the way I said it. Derek Carr today, better option than Andy Dalton today. I don't even think that's debatable. Today, Derek Carr is better than Andy Dalton. It's a better option. However, if the Saints were to trade for Derek Carr, again, give up assets to get a player in his 30s who's declining with that contract, I said that would be the worst personnel decision the Saints have made since trading an entire draft for Ricky Williams. Now, I'm not opposed to the Saints signing Derek Carr as a free agent. If there were a team-friendly deal, great. I'm all for that. Trading for Derek Carr is something I was adamantly opposed to. Well, it looks like Derek Carr has taken that decision-making away from the Saints, because Ian Rappaport on Super Bowl Sunday tweeted, Derek Carr has informed the Raiders that he will not accept a trade to the Saints or any other team. He notes the team is expected to release him, and he'll be a top free agent. So, Derek Carr has a no-trade clause, does not have to accept a trade to any team, and apparently will not accept a trade to any team. There was another report from the Associated Press that suggested that, and I'm going to read this directly. Again, it was on a condition of anonymity. Apparently, they had the framework. The Saints and the Raiders had the framework of a deal in place, but Carr would not. Again, this is according to a source from the Associated Press. Carr would not accept a pay cut to help finalize the deal, and the Saints were the only team interested in making a trade for Derek Carr, which that in and of itself should tell you a lot. When you're the only team interested in something, you kind of need to look in the mirror. So you all know the situation. Carr visited the Saints on Wednesday. His contract, $40.4 million of his contract with the Raiders becomes guaranteed. So the Raiders are going to cut him before that contract becomes guaranteed. He'll become a free agent, can sign wherever he wants. So a few things. Number one, I think this lets you know Derek Carr's priority. I think this goes to show you that when the only team that was willing to give up assets for you, the only team that was willing to make a trade for you, and you say no, I mean, because you didn't want to take a pay cut, that tells you where his priority is. Now, this is a guy that in 9 seasons has career earnings of $135 million. Money shouldn't be the driver for Derek Carr. But then again, who am I to say? Every person in every industry, everywhere, has different motivating factors. For some people, it's money. For some people, it's winning. For some people, it's notoriety. For some people, it's location. I don't know. I don't know what Derek Carr sees as his priority, but the Saints were the only team that were willing to make a trade for him, and he said no. I also don't know that the Saints are going to be able to make the most attractive financial offer. Now, maybe they could, if they structure something that spreads out over many years, that's sort of team and cap friendly. They could structure something that way. But I would hope the Saints aren't going to spend $37 million annually on Derek Carr, which according to Spotrac, that is his market value. It's about $37 million per year. That seems ludicrous to me, but that's going rate for a premier starting quarterback in the NFL. The other thing this confirms to me, though, is the Saints' poor decision-making. Because if this report is to be believed, then I have no reason to doubt it. I mean, guys like Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero and the Associated Press have all essentially reported the same thing, that the Saints had the framework of a deal in place to acquire Derek Carr. And if you were going to sort of remove yourself from the vacuum of just what does it look like with Derek Carr with Saints in 2023 and think about the big picture ramifications of that decision, essentially the Saints' willingness to make a deal for Derek Carr tells you, it gives you a glimpse into the mind of where Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen feel like this team, this roster is. They're willing to give up assets for Derek Carr, which tells you they feel like Derek Carr can win them a championship. The Saints, for 15 years now, have been in, we said it, perpetual win-now mode. Like they are trying to win championships every year. And if they're willing to give up assets to, again, understand what those assets mean, what they represent, the opportunity to bring on talented players on rookie contracts, affordable young players. Yes, in some ways that suggests a rebuild, but think about the Saints' great pushes of the last era. They're rooted in the 2006 draft and the 2017 draft, when you hit on a bunch of young players that became the cornerstones of your great teams. Essentially, the Saints are saying, we don't want those assets because we feel like we're Derek Carr away from being a contender. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. I don't know where you stand on it. I don't know where the consensus, if there is a consensus among the fan base, but I don't know how you could realistically look at this roster. That is James Hurst at left tackle. That's probably going to purge Andrus Peat as a cap casualty this year. That got very little out of Trevor Penning, but we're all hopeful for him in the future. That has Cesar Ruiz, who played better this year, but again, I don't think up to this point in his career he's lived up to the billing as a first-round pick. That after Alvin Kamara, who has yet since his rookie year to play a full season and could miss a chunk of this next year because of the incident in Las Vegas. That is thin. Chris Olave, I think, has proven he can be a number one receiver in the NFL. And Rashid Shaheed is exciting, certainly. But I don't think we're going to look at the Saints receiving core and look at it as deep as we would have with Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, had they all been healthy and played the way they were. You flip it over, your defensive line clearly took giant steps back. Demario Davis is a great player, but he's aging. I think you probably have solidified cornerback, and safety is a giant question. I don't know how you can look at this team with all of the holes they have and say they're Derek Carr away from being a contender. But that's clearly what this front office thinks by their willingness to trade for Derek Carr. And that's concerning to me. That's very concerning to me. Now, the next big question becomes, okay, the Raiders are going to cut Derek Carr by Wednesday. Well, will Derek Carr pick the Saints? What is his market going to look like? Ian Rappaport was on the Pat McAfee show today and suggested that a deal with the Saints or a union with the Saints and Derek Carr isn't necessarily done.
With Derek Carr said to be a free agent, had he been traded, which he's not going to be now, he would have been the first domino. Now, I think there are some teams, and I know the Saints are still interested. I know he's still interested in them. Now, when he's a free agent, he could potentially just negotiate his own new contract with the Saints, not have to worry about his old contract.
Hold on. Doesn't he want $40 million? He's not going to get $40 million on the open market, is he?
I don't think so, but it wasn't $40 million. It was $40 million guaranteed spread out over 2 years. So it was $33 this year. Now, might he get a little less than that? I think that's possible, but free agency sometimes dictates different things than what we expect, so we'll see what the market is.
Even if you're talking about in the neighborhood of $30 million for Derek Carr, I understand to have nice things, sometimes you have to spend money. I'm not opposed. I'm not saying don't spend money on nice things. Was perfectly fine paying Michael Thomas the contract you did. Perfectly fine paying Ryan Ramczyk and Marshawn Lattimore. You want nice things, you have to pay for it. That's fine. what I don't want to do is overpay for a 32-year-old quarterback who I think is near the end of his career, and certainly is on the downside of his productivity. So what does that look like? I don't know. So the next big question becomes, what is the market like for Derek Carr? And I mean, however you want to stack up these rankings, I mean, Pro Football Focus took a stab at it, and they ranked the quarterback-needy teams in the NFL. And some are obvious, like the Texans and the Colts and the Panthers, the Jets. Like, these teams have to make a move to bring in a quarterback. But the Texans and the Colts and the Panthers are all at the top of the draft. They're all going to draft a quarterback in whatever way it works out. You know, the Jets are making inquiries about Aaron Rodgers. The Raiders are going to cut Derek Carr. They need a quarterback, but that's not going to be Derek Carr. The Washington Commanders, the Carson Wentz era there is over. Are you convinced it's Taylor Heineke? No. So they need a quarterback. And then if you look at number 7 on the list from Pro Football Focus, it's New Orleans, followed by Atlanta. We'll see what they do there if they're convinced Desmond Ridder's their guy. The Titans at 9 could be interesting. You know, if you're Derek Carr, it keeps you in the AFC. You got a really strong running game and a good defense. And then you got guys, teams with young quarterbacks, the Patriots, the Bears, the Dolphins, Tampa, the Rams. What happens in Green Bay if Rodgers does leave? These teams could come into the conversation a little bit, but you can sort of see how the Saints kind of stand alone potentially in this market for Derek Carr, which is why I think there was no real suitors in the trade market for him. And while there's other quarterback-needy teams, most of them that are desperate for a quarterback, that are a better situation maybe than New Orleans, are going to draft quarterbacks. So it may come down to the Saints and Derek Carr, Derek Carr signing with the Saints as a free agent, which, again, I'm perfectly fine with, provided the terms of the deal are fair and the Saints don't compromise their future by committing a long-term expensive deal to a quarterback who's near the end of his career. So we'll follow this. It's going to be the big story now. I mean, the first big domino to fall for New Orleans in the offseason was going to be the Sean Payton news. What happened with Sean Payton? Were the Saints going to recoup any assets for Payton? We now know the answer. Okay, they got a first-round pick from Denver as a result. The second is, okay, what do you do at quarterback? And they're making their move for Derek Carr. And we'll see if he ultimately picks New Orleans and signs with the Saints as a free agent. If he does, then you go into the draft knowing who your starting quarterback is going to be, still with your full complement of draft assets. So that might be an ideal situation for the Saints, depending on how much it costs to acquire Derek Carr. But with a $37 million price tag in the upper 30s, $30 million per year, that's really tough to stomach for a guy at this point in his career, who to me, I continue to say it, feels and looks more and more like Andy Dalton was. I mean, we went over their stats last week. I mean, he is statistically what Andy Dalton was when Andy Dalton got pushed out in Cincinnati. I mean, their final seasons were almost mirror images. And we know what happened with Dalton. He went to Dallas and then the Bears and New Orleans, 3 teams in 3 years, and he just, he can't stick anywhere because he's done. How close to that is Carr? And I think he's essentially that guy at this point in his career. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.